back to my channel. I'm so glad that you are here for another fun video. So I'm Katie and you are watching my Vlogtober 31 days of Halloween spectacular, I suppose. And we are on day number 17 already. So our prompt from yesterday was 1930s and 1940s horror. So this guy right here. So I wanted to hear about your favorite films from these two decades. And there is a plethora of films you could choose from. And I'm going to pick quite a few today. So stay tuned for those choices. But as always, we're going to start with my music recommendation. And it is another piece from Mr. Joseph Bishara because I freaking love him. I think that he does the horror movie score like nobody else. I mean, there's a lot of other people I really love, but Joseph Bishara really has his, his finger to the pulse of what creates fear and truly unsettling sounds, because this song does not have any typical instrumentation. No real violins, aside from the only instrument I could say is blaring horns, like maybe a trombone or a tuba, something along those lines. But there are so many things happening in his music, and it's quite jarring, it's quite unsettling, and I think that this is the very first piece of music in The Conjuring, so it really sets the tone for the rest of the movie, and truly for the rest of the series, because Joseph Bishara has been the composer of all of the film scores so far. So I think he does an absolutely incredible job. We already listened to a piece of his from the Insidious soundtrack, but I want to give another shout out to him because I just love his style of music. I love everything about it. So let's listen to Joseph Bishara's Touring Haunted Plains from the Conjuring soundtrack. Haven't put my gather candle out in a while. Figured I'd do that today. He lulls you into a sense of calm in ways, and then he brings it back in a way that not many people can, and it's just real creepy. Everything he does is just creepy. So I'm going to end it there. Like I said, you always have to go and finish these songs yourself. I'm not playing the full thing for you. So, of course, I pulled mine from Spotify, and you can pick it up off of Apple Music and anywhere that you stream your music. So that is my choice for Song of the Day, which is Touring Haunted Plains by Joseph Bishara. So definitely check him out if you have not before, because he is extraordinary. And then let's move on to my book recommendation. So my book today is kind of a just kind of a guide, really. It's not something that you're going to read all the way through. I mean, I guess you could if you wanted to, but really a book like this is more towards helping you and finding out certain things as you're kind of progressing. So this is a book called The Complete Illustrated Guide to Herbs, and it's by Nan Shaw. And I picked this handy dandy little thing up from Barnes & Noble, I think, in their discount section, and it has been a treasure trove of advice and a wonderful guidebook to kind of getting me more acclimated to what I'm growing in my garden. I love planting things in the springtime. I love watching things grow and mature, and I've always been fascinated about herbs in general and the mysticism that kind of surrounds herbs, because I know a lot of people think it's hooey and all that stuff, but I mean, people were taking care of other people by using herbal remedies for generations before modern science kind of kicked in with medications and things like that. So I find herbal medication fascinating. I don't do any of it myself. I'm not really confident in that respect right now in my journey, but I have always been really drawn to this. And I love that this thing is completely, like it says, it's completely illustrated. So you have got beautiful color photos of all the herbs involved. They kind of go through a preface where they give you the introduction to herbs and where this whole idea kind of came about. And there's this great thing at the beginning of how to use the book. So it kind of takes you step by step on a literal guided tour of how you can use this book to really help you along whatever path you're choosing by reading something like this. You know, if you're trying to take better care of yourself, there are herbs that are used to help certain symptoms of like diabetes or anxiety or depression or, you know, things like that. You can find a more homeopathic herbal remedy as opposed to taking over-the-counter drugs. And I am one of those people that if I can find another way to do it and not have to put another drug in my body, I will happily go down that road first. See if it has any kind of helping properties, and then if it doesn't work for me, then I'll go another route. But I truly love this book for what it has done for me. I suffer from pretty extreme panic attacks and anxiety, and so when I started reading through this, I found that there were a lot of different herbs that I could be incorporating into tea or just taking supplements that would maybe help my condition. And I really appreciate, like I said, that over modern medicines for today. So like I said, it goes over the origins of herbal medicine, and it kind of gives you just a little general rundown of China and India and North America's introductions to herbology and how it's been incorporated over the years, how things have changed and advanced. So it goes into theories of early medicine, how herbalism really works. So there is so many fun things in this book that you will learn as you go. So this is the chemical components of herbs. So, you know, they're not just making stuff up. There is a medical reason for the success rates of these herbs. So that's another reason why I appreciate books like these, because they kind of give you a general a sense of calm knowing that people have studied these things and you're not just taking something for shits and giggles for all intents and terms. I mean, you're actually looking into what works and trying to find a more, like I said, a nicer way to absolve you of your symptoms without having to turn to a prescription or other over-the-counter means. So I think it's wonderful. And it really goes into herbalism and pregnancy and childbirth. It's going over food intolerances to help remedy that, which I definitely need help with, because I find as I get older, I'm tolerating things less and less and less. And my stomach hates me 98.7% of my life. So I'm still trying to figure out all the problems that I have, but they go over symptoms for nausea, liver disorders, gallstones, irritable bowel, diarrhea, constipation, you know, all those super fun things that, you know, you go out and you buy Pepto or whatever to try and alleviate it. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it just, you got to work through it, whatever, you know, you've eaten that didn't sit well with you or whatever the case is. But I just really love this book. It's got, for every possible issue you can think of, urinary system issues, low blood pressure, psoriasis, you know, maintaining good health in general, what you should be taking to kind of keep you on a even balanced keel. So like I said, I love this book, and I got it, like I said, at Barnes & Noble on the their discount section. So, but I'm fairly certain you could find this on their website or find it through like Amazon or eBay, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's a beautiful book. It's easy to read through. It kind of, like I said, takes you step by step into what you're reading so that you have a very good handle on it, and I really am glad that I stumbled upon this book. I actually found another book at the same time I picked this one up, and I will be talking about that book at a later time. But yeah, like I said, that book it came to my life just when I needed it. I was kind of really in the peak of my anxiety issues, and so I've been, like I said, trying to go a more herbal, tea-based remedy route instead of going on a prescription that usually gives me other symptoms on top of the issues I have. So that is my book recommendation for today. Definitely check that out if you are at all interested in herbalism. I think you'll find it very, very fascinating. So, of course, for my movie recommendations today, I will be spending a lot of time talking about, you guessed it, the classic Universal monsters, because they were basically birthed in the 30s. So you had so many beautiful things that came out in a very short amount of time. You know, starting off, well, really we had like Nosferatu that came out in 1922, but it's not considered a Universal monster film. That was actually filmed in Slovakia and was a German-based director, F.W. Murnau. So he kind of started this whole thing, but people don't actually realize that it started even before Nosferatu. We had a 1910 version of Frankenstein that was released from the Edison Company. So when Edison was creating their motion picture camera, one of their first films they created was a adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. And so I will show you a picture of that up here. He looks terrifying in every way, shape, or form, and the movie is absolutely astounding. It is in it doesn't have a copyright anymore, so it's in the public domain, and you can watch it. It's 12 minutes or so long, so nothing too major, but you get the full story, you know, in those 12 minutes. And of course, it is a silent film, but they have adapted it with a musical score underneath, so it is so incredible to watch. I'll see if I can find some GIFs and I'll post something up here so you can kind of get the idea of what it looks like. And I always wonder what it would have been like to be living in that time and watching this for the first time going, when is any of this? I mean, we've all grown up knowing what Frankenstein is and knowing what Dracula and Bride of Frankenstein and the Wolfman and the Invisible Man and all of these characters are. So I don't think any of that surprises us anymore. I think monsters in general, things come out all the time and we just go, that's a cool monster. We don't really think about what was it like the first time the world saw something like that. So I'm continually amazed by what filmmakers were able to do back in those, I mean, over a century ago. So I absolutely love this generation of filmmaking. The 30s, like I said, especially were the birth of the Universal monsters. So it started with Dracula back in 1931, and he was actually born on Valentine's Day. It was released to the public February 14th, 1931. So if you can imagine, what do you guys want to do for Valentine's Day? Let's go see this movie called Dracula, you know, based on that Bram Stoker book. And I can't even believe that it had a Valentine's Day release. Maybe Valentine's Day wasn't a big thing back in 1931, but probably it was. I can't imagine it wasn't. But I just thought that was amazing. But in that same year, in 1931, at the end of the year, the tail end in November, I think it was November 22nd. November 21st. Okay, so November 21st, 1931, we were given Frankenstein. So it entered the world in 1931 and took the world completely by surprise. You know what I mean? Like, before then, people only had these things in their minds. They had no idea what was going to show up on a screen and be animated into life. So, I mean, much like the Frankenstein story, you know, creating something and bringing it to life, these filmmakers were doing the very same thing. So we have, you know, these directors and these filmmakers, Carl Laemmle especially, who was kind of paramount to the creation of these films, because he had his studio kind of producing all of these things. And, you know, the directors, James Whale, and every single time I think about the Universal monsters, you have to give a nod to Carl Laemmle and to James Whale, because they revolutionized, I think, movie going as we know it today. I don't think that things would be the same without them. So I don't have these movies individually. I've been thinking about maybe picking them up, but I did find a pack of the movies from Walmart years ago, so I picked this up, and it's got the basic classics. The only one this one doesn't really have is The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which kind of bums me out a bit, but I found it at a later point in my life, so I bought that one, and it's in a different format, but it does have the slipcover on it. And then it has, like I said, all of these movies involved in it. So 90% of these movies were made in the 30s. The only one that was made in the 40s was this guy right here, the Wolfman, and he was out in 1941, I think. Yeah, so he came out in 1941. The rest of these guys were the 30s. So like I said, you had Dracula and Frankenstein, who were 1931, and then you had The Bride, who was 1935. You've got The Mummy, who was 1932, and then The Invisible Man was 33. So that decade, man, was just pumping out these stories, and what a time to be alive. I mean, you've got everything going on in the world with World War I raging and, you know, getting ready for World War II. Because, I mean, when the Wolfman came in 1941, that was the dawn of World War II. So you've got to think about these people going through so much hardship, but finding a release in a terrifying tale. So I don't know, and maybe that's why I love horror as much as I do, because it is such a vacation from yourself. You know, you go see these movies and they give you a whole new breath, a new sense of life, and I don't know, man. I am so grateful. I am, you know, a 30-something-year-old woman who, I wasn't really raised on these. I didn't watch them when I was a kid. I mean, I saw them on, like, Svengoolie, who is a kind of a movie host a la Elvira. He is from Illinois, I think, and he would showcase mostly in, like, the Chicagoland area, but me being in Ohio, we were kind of close enough that he would show up on my TV every Saturday night. And so he would showcase these movies. And if I was lucky, I would be able to catch one of these classic films. I mean, he was more doing like Son of Dracula and like movies like that. But every once in a while, you got a classic. And on those days, I always felt so grateful because I knew that I was going to be experiencing something really awesome. So the movie posters, well, some of the movie posters are on the back of this. And this doesn't even do justice to all the movies that, like the posters that have been released since then. It kind of shocks me. When I went to that Frankenstein presentation with my mom last week, they were showcasing different like Frankenstein posters and things over the years, and it just boggles my mind the beauty in that color, the technicolor-y motif, and I just think it's so great. So each film in here is separate. So you know, you've got Dracula, you've got Frankenstein, and then you've got The Bride, you've got Wolfman, and then you've got The Invisible Man here, and The Mummy. So I like the way they did that. I like that they're separate DVDs, you know, for every movie. But yeah, I absolutely love this collection. Like I said, they have an actual new collection that came out. It's about $99, but it incorporates every single movie. I mean, you get all the classic Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman. You also get all of the secondary incarnations, so like Son of Frankenstein, Daughter of Dracula, Curse of the Mummy, you know, all of these films, and they're kind of in a nice, neat, beautiful package. So a lot of those movies, like I haven't seen Son of Frankenstein. I saw, let me pull up the list of the movies here really quick. I was just looking at it this morning. But yeah, so starting in 1931 was Dracula, and then they came out with the Spanish version. So that one came out, you know, 2 months later in April. Then you've got Frankenstein, The Mummy in 1932, The Invisible Man in 33, Bride of Frankenstein in 35. Werewolf of London actually came out first before The Wolfman. So a lot of people don't know that, but Werewolf of London was in 1935 as well. And then Dracula's Daughter in 1936 and Son of Frankenstein in 1939. I always get those names confused. I think I said it was Son of Dracula at one point, but there's a son and a daughter of all these people. And then you've got, you know, the 1940s was really like the reintroduction, and they put a spin on the movie. So now you've got The Invisible Man Returns, you've got The Mummy's Hand, The Invisible Woman, The Wolf Man, and like I said, 1941, Ghost of Frankenstein, Invisible Agent, The Mummy's Tomb, Frankenstein Meets the Wolf Man, Phantom of the Opera, The Invisible Man's Revenge, The Mummy's Ghost, The House of Frankenstein, The Mummy's Curse, House of Dracula, and then you start getting into the Abbott and Costello era, which a lot of people, they kind of just sidestep over those, but I think that those are very important pieces of the Universal Monster repertoire, truly, because they brought back those favorite characters. You know, when I was watching that presentation, they were kind of saying that the public was generally waning interest in the monsters at that point. You know, by the end of the 40s, they were kind of tapped out about that. And I don't know if I would feel the same way if I lived in that time, if I would have ever gotten tired of seeing these amazing characters. But you know how the public is. You can only keep them intrigued for so long before they kind of give up. But that was kind of the reasoning for the Abbott and Costello mashups, is they wanted to kind of do one last hurrah for the monsters and kind of let them go out with a bang. So like I said, we'll get to the 1950s films at a later portion in my Vlogtober countdown, but we had 5 additional films that came out in the 50s, mostly Abbott and Costello related, but then Creature from the Black Lagoon, that's when it was released, was 1950. So a lot of people don't realize that either, but it came out 2 decades really past the initial surgence of the Universal Monsters. So we'll get to those ones at a later date, like I said. But yeah, it's kind of amazing how all of that worked out overall. You know, it's 2 decades that really, I think, thrust the Motion Picture Association into a really good place. And I think that, like I said, people really needed those films at that time, and they're just absolutely wonderful. So I want to do another film recommendation today, and that is for the 1947 film The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Now, this film got a kind of a spin-off in, I think, the late 60s or early 70s. They brought back the characters as a television show. So it aired for, I think, 2 seasons, I'm sorry. And that came out, let me see. Let me pull up my Wikipedia here. So that was a 60s premiere. So it premiered in September of 1968. But I'm not going to talk about the series. I really want to talk about and focus on the movie, because The Ghost and Mrs. Muir is one of my favorite films of all time. And it was another one of those films where I encountered it later in life. I think I was in my early 20s, and I was flipping through and I found TCM. And so TCM is Turner Classic Movies here in the United States, and they showcase, you know, so many beautiful movies from these decades. And so I read on the TV guide portion, you know, what the movie was about, and I was like, that sounds really interesting, I'll watch it. I was enamored with this film. I mean, it got over, and it was so sad it ended. I just wanted to watch it again. So I don't know. It is such a beautiful story of a badass woman who has been dealt a bad hand. Her husband passes away at the beginning of the movie, and she's left her and her daughter. She doesn't really know what to do, and her mother-in-law and her sister-in-law are trying to get her to move in with them. They're really spiteful old cats, basically. And I guess they just expect that she's going to, well, now that she's a widower, there's nothing left for her, and she'll just have to come and live with them. And Mrs. Muir says, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think that I'm going to go and find a better life for my daughter and I. And so she goes and visits a real estate agent who haphazardly tries to take her around to these properties that are available. Everything's way out of her budget. So as she's sitting in the office, she sees a piece of paper that's got this cottage listed on it. And so she says, this one, I want to go see this one because it's in my price range. And he says, oh, you don't want to see that one. Nobody likes that one. And she says, well, I do. I want to go see it. So regretfully, he takes her to this piece of property. She instantly falls in love with it. And the guy kind of hints that people don't stay there for very long when they move in. And she's like, I don't know the reason. I frankly don't care. This is what I can afford in my budget. So my daughter and I are going to move in. So they do. And they have, you know, back in the 40s, they had like maids and a nanny for her daughter. So the maid moves with them. And so it's just these three women in this house. And as she's walking around the house, we see a huge portrait of an old sea captain. And you get a sense that something's up with that painting. And then you later find out that that was the painting of the old resident of this household. And he passed away, and he's now haunting the house. So that's the reason why people don't stick around, is because this cantankerous old sea dog keeps kicking people out of his house. He doesn't want them there. So he tries to do the same thing with Mrs. Muir, and she's not having it. She's like, look, man, I gotta pay for a house, and this is what's in my budget, and you are not scaring me away. And so I think that really endears her to him, because he can't kick her out. He can't push her around like he does with everybody else. And I think that they become endeared to each other. You know, it becomes a symbiotic relationship where she's trying to find ways to make money. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't have a job, because back in the 40s, of course, women weren't going and really working unless they worked in the factories during the World Wars. So she's trying to be, you know, inventive with different ideas. And the sea captain says, why don't you write a book for me? And then you can sell it and then keep all the, you know, the profits. I just want to get my story out there. So he dictates this story to her, you know, as she's typing it up, and he wants to call it Blood and Swash, and she's like, there's no way we're calling it that. And he's like, if you want to write this book, that's what we're calling it. So then it turns into Mrs. Muir has to go and try and sell this book to a publishing company. She goes in and she meets this, I don't know, I thought he was a slime ball from the beginning, but this kind of suave guy that's in the publication office. He's got a meeting with the lead publisher, and he decides to give up his spot, and he gives it to Mrs. Muir so she can go in and speak with him. And she sells him on the book. He starts reading it, and she tells him that she was kind of the ghostwriter for this guy, and that he, you know, didn't really want to be named, but it was his story, because he kept asking her, how did you write this story? How would you know this terminology and all this stuff? So she's got to think quick and go, oh, you know, this was just a story that was dictated to me and all this kind of stuff. So I always found it to be fascinating to see this woman have this much ingenuity and go, look, this is the hand I'm dealt. We're going to do this, and we're going to make a better life for my kid. So I think it's a beautiful story. And if you've not seen The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, you definitely need to, because it, especially if you're a woman, I mean, I think I felt so empowered when I saw this movie, because she does. She's got kind of a rough going on at the beginning of this, is she's just in a point where if she, you know, can't find something to do, can't find a way to take care of herself, she's got to move in with these two women that she absolutely despises. And luckily it doesn't turn to that. So she's able to tell this story. And as most of these stories go, you know, the ghost falls in love with Mrs. Muir, but understands that they can't be together. He's a ghost. So he pushes her away, and he disappears out of her life for a time. And she goes on, she lives her life, her daughter grows up, and she gets engaged and is going to be married. And, you know, towards the end of Mrs. Muir's life, then he comes back in, and they head off to heaven together. But it's just such a marvelous movie. I can't tell you enough. If I haven't sold it to you yet, I probably won't, but it is a beautiful story. And especially if you've got kids, I think your kids should see this movie too, because like I said, it's empowering, and it's just a really, really wonderful story. So that is my suggestion for my movies today, is all of the Universal monsters, every single one of them. I love them all. I don't think I've seen a single Universal film that I didn't just absolutely become enamored with. You know, I truly think that they are all amazing. So definitely check out the Universal Monsters. If you wanted to start with one, I would maybe begin with Frankenstein or maybe the Wolfman. Those are my two, I think, favorites. Aside from, I mean, Bride of Frankenstein is actually the most brilliant film ever, but I think you need to see Frankenstein first in order to really get the whole perspective of Bride. So start with Frankenstein and then move on to Bride of Frankenstein and the Wolfman. I love Dracula, but Dracula wasn't the story that really sold it for me. Aside from Bela Lugosi's his whole persona, his whole demeanor, I think that he was a spectacular actor who was underutilized for much of his life. And yeah, so I definitely just watch them all. They're not long. They're only like maybe an hour and 10 minutes, I think at the most, 10-15 minutes. So you can get through a lot of these films in a very short amount of time. So especially around the spooky season, you know, you can't really beat a good quality ghost story or a monster story. So definitely check out the Universal Monsters and check out the Ghost and Mrs. Muir. So I'm going to move on to my my TV recommendation for today, and this is a recent watch for me. This was only you know, 20 years or so in the making for me to finally watch this series, but it is Twin Peaks. And I know we were talking during quarantine, a friend of mine and I was like, you know, if the world's gonna end here soon, I should probably watch Twin Peaks, because everybody always like raves about it. My sister has always raved about this show, and I was like, I don't know what the big deal is. Okay, we'll watch it. Oh my God, did I watch it? So I can't give any advice to watch the third season of this film, this TV show, because I don't have Showtime or whatever channel that it was shown on, because that's the only place you can stream it is from the original location. I think it's Showtime, but I haven't been able to find a way to watch that one just yet. So only seasons 1 and 2 I can speak to, but it is batshit bonkers, to be sure. I mean, the whole premise of the show is based off of, and I'm sure you already know this, who killed Laura Palmer. That is the whole overall topic that everyone's trying to figure out. You know, the first episode, they find Laura's body. She's wrapped in a tarp or, you know, some kind of a plastic sheeting, and she's found on the beach. And so it becomes this murder mystery of, you know, who killed her and what was the reasoning for it. You meet this motley cast of characters. You know, you meet her boyfriend, who was kind of a dick, who was cheating on her, you know, during all of this. And you meet, you know, the town sheriff and the FBI agent that's played by, oh man, this is going to happen to me again today. Dang it. Let me put a pause on it. Let me look it up. Kyle MacLachlan. It's Kyle MacLachlan. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. But so he plays the FBI agent that is sent to Twin Peaks to try and uncover this story, because nobody can seem to figure out what's going on and what the cause of the crime was. And Kyle MacLachlan's character has also been trying to follow this other serial killer story, where this guy has been murdering these women and then sticking things underneath their nails. Oh, grossed me out so bad when they would pull like little tiny pieces of paper out from underneath their thumbnail, and there would be like a letter on it, and it was supposed to kind of help to solve the clue of who this serial killer was. And like I said, this series is completely batshit. Like, it is just, what? Like, and the first couple episodes are pretty tame. You get through maybe the first 3 or so episodes, and I mean, people are kind of goofy, and you're getting the sense that this is definitely not a normal town to be growing up in, but you don't really think too much of it. And then all of a sudden, like a switch got flipped, and things get crazy. People act nutty in this show. There's a weird cadence to everybody. The way that they talk is kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, there's just this weird overall like relaxed vibe. Like they're all on like some kind of a drug, some psychedelic drug that makes everybody laid back and relaxed, but like it's not really a laid back, relaxed atmosphere. I mean, there's a murder mystery going on, and you know, you've got all these little side stories going on. There is a wood mill that has a lot of story revolving around it as well. The characters involved with that, you know, you've got a husband and wife group, and a other woman who was married to like the owner of the wood mill. He dies under mysterious circumstances, and so she is now the owner of the mill. The husband and wife group are kind of like the co-owners of it, but she's got like all the power really with it. So her name is Josie, and she becomes one of the, you know, main characters in the season. And oh my gosh, you get introduced to a slew of people. It's like a cavalcade of people. They just keep coming through, and you're like, who are we gonna meet today, kind of thing. But it's so intriguing. It's so entertaining. And I watched it from the beginning to the very last episode of season 2, and they actually give away the storyline. I mean, I thought that Twin Peaks would kind of keep the who killed Laura Palmer thing a lot longer than they did. I mean, they kind of gave up the ghost middle of the second season, and then we're kind of, I don't know, twiddling their thumbs figuring out how to finish out the season. So it kind of felt weird that they would give up the most important part of the show at that point. And then they kind of just went off the rails with other storylines and wrapping up other things and diving you into other weird things. I mean, it gets into like a serial killery, demon-y ghost thing that's like inhabiting people's bodies, and it, like, what? I still don't think I completely understand it. It's one of those shows where you're like, okay, I watched it, but like, what? Like, what did I watch? I talked to my sister afterwards, and I was like, I don't know what that is. I'm kind of upset, but I'm also thrilled that I watched it, and it's definitely something to talk about. So, oh man, Twin Peaks it's something else, man. And currently, I have plunged myself into starting the Dark Shadows series. So it's been slow going on that one. I keep getting distracted by other things, like Bly Manor came out, and I just keep getting distracted. So I need to come back to Dark Shadows. I'm still in like the end of season 1, I think. So I need to start up season 2. But that's another fun series, because that series started as like a soap opera back in the 60s, I think. 50s or 60s. Anyway, but yeah, I told myself I'm gonna go back and watch all these classic like spooky shows, because I don't know why I skipped over them, but it's time to kind of backtrack and introduce myself to these. So that's been one good thing of quarantine, is it's given me some time to be able to check out some spooky shit. So it makes me really happy, and I'm glad I saw Twin Peaks, and I think that everybody should see Twin Peaks so you can understand what I say when it's just off the rails crazy. It's just the goofiest, craziest show. And I am a big Psych fan. I think we've talked about this before in my vlog series. And there is a spoof episode of Psych that's called Dual Spires. Instead of Twin Peaks, it's Dual Spires. And they have, you know, a lot of the cast from Twin Peaks makes a cameo in this episode. And it is just so funny. Now that I've seen Twin Peaks, now that I know the jokes about it, it's amazing. And even like the person that gets killed in their episode, it is an anagram for Laura Palmer. So her name is just Laura Palmer's name all mixed up. And I can't remember all of a sudden her name. Let me think about it, and I'll just post it down here. But I saw that and I was like, oh wait, that's Laura Palmer. It's just all like Pamela something, maybe. Pamela something. I think her name was Pamela, but I can't remember the last name now. Anyway, so yeah, it was just amazing to go back and watch that episode and go, oh, you know that James Roday is a fan of Twin Peaks because he definitely homaged that very well. So if you are a fan of Psych and you didn't really understand that episode, watch Twin Peaks and then you will get it, and it will be absolutely hilarious. So, yeah, I think that's it for my recommendations for today, but let's go ahead and move on to my prompt for tomorrow, and that one is gonna be vicious vamps. We're gonna talk about some spooky, scary vampires. I don't want to hear about the sparkly Twilight vampires, guys. I want to hear about the ones that keep you up at night. So that is my prompt for tomorrow, vicious vamps. So we will discuss that in details on my next episode, and I guess I'll leave it at that, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. I hope you guys are doing well, hope you're healthy and staying safe, and washing your hands, wearing your masks, all that stuff that those good kids are doing out there. I want you to do it because I want you to stay healthy. So I'm gonna end this, and I will see your lovely faces tomorrow. Bye.